For more on the relationship between China and the United Nations and China's role in the organization, I want to bring in Luis Costa Ribas from Boston. He's a former managing editor at Voice of America. President Xi says China will firmly support Guterres. How important was this meeting, would you say?
This meeting was very important because China, of course, is a permanent member of the Security Council, and there's very little that the UN Secretary General can get done without the support of the Security Council and without the support of its 5 permanent members. So he was also in Russia. He had meetings with President Putin. Now he's been in China. He will still have to have meetings with the new American administration whenever they take office. So these meetings are very important because he somehow needs to get these 5 powers into some kind of cooperation mode, into some kind of consensus to advance any agenda at the United States, at the United Nations. And what you have had so far is a break between the United States and the Soviet Union, and not so profound a break, but some divergences with China. And so he knows he needs to bring particularly these 3 big powers together in some kind of way in order to advance the agenda of stability and peace that your reporter was talking about.
What about the changing dynamic? You have a new president in the United States coming in. No one really has a clear view of what his foreign policy is. President Xi, Premier Li, I read one headline not too long ago, on the road again. They've done a lot of traveling, building bridges all around the world, basically globetrotters. You see 2 different approaches now, don't you?
Yes, what you have now is, I think it's been clear from previous positions that we may see that the new administration has little use for the United Nations, as Donald Trump has spoken, with some, I wouldn't say disrespect, but certainly not a great deal of respect for multilateralism. It really has no use for it. So I think this will give China an opportunity to play a more prominent role. China wants to play a more prominent role. It has sent, I think, about 1,000 peacekeepers to South Sudan. And it can have a bigger role. Mr. Guterres has also mentioned that he would like China to be also an honest broker in international conflicts. And I think if the United States is going to retreat, that will give China an opportunity to have a more, important role and a wider role in the United Nations and in general over the entire international political system. So it's certainly an opportunity there if the United States is going to pull back. Of course, that leaves another open question, which is, the question of financing. The United States finances a lot of the UN expenses. It's the biggest chunk. I don't know if China is going to be willing to contribute more, if the U.S. is going to retreat, but those are questions that are out there in the open, and I think that the reason Mr. Guterres went to Beijing and to Moscow, he really wants to bring these other 2 big powers into the fold and make sure the UN remains relevant, even if the United States takes a step back.
And Guterres is also praising China for the Asia Investment Infrastructure Bank, peacekeeping missions, as you brought up. Also work with developing countries. And one of the things that we also saw with China back in 2015, sending a ship in, getting a lot of foreign nationals out of Yemen and Aden. It seems as though that China is taking more of a step forward in terms of having more of an international footprint. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, and I think on the one hand, if you want to have more of an influence, you also have more. If you want to be influent, you have to project, not just be helpful to other countries, and they'll respect you for that. I think there's an opportunity there. And they will expect, the major countries with an opportunity to come and play a role into the system, or a more prominent role into the system, also to be in favor of the system and to support it, with troops, with political presence. I think what you've mentioned about the refugees is very important. Mr. Guterres was the head of the UNHCR, and so the refugees are a problem that it's very close to his heart. And he's a humanist. I've known him for 20 years, and he's really a humanist at heart, and those things are close to his heart. And I think he will try to bring these countries into a more active role, started with the issues that he knows that it's easier to get a consensus. I think it's easier to get a consensus that countries that care about the world have a larger humanitarian footprint, and usually being a humanitarian is not a very controversial thing. So it's a good start for any country who wants to improve their international stance, and he wants to have a wider international influence.
All right. Thanks so much for your insights. Appreciate it.